Hey, we're back. So end of last video, we essentially finished um, these pivot uprights. Um, there's one big thing that we have to fix before we progress, and thankfully it was pointed out to me by another mentor on our team. Um, and I'm gonna point it out to you and let you kind of figure out what is going on. Okay, so we added the motors, right? Motor and the pulley setup. So this axle is spinning, and we're gonna belt up to our main pivot axle. Okay, so now this pivot axle is spinning. How is the intake going to be constrained about this axle if it's got bearings in there? We don't need the bearings in there. What we need is a rigid attachment point from the intake to the hex shaft. I'm going to think about it a little bit more. I'm going to move ahead with finishing some of the other small stuff we have to do with the upright. And then we're going to come back to fixing this in all senses of the word fixing. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna walk you through transferring the mounting holes for this motor onto this pivot point, and then I'm gonna walk you through. I think I've done this before once with creating part fabrication drawings. I'm gonna do that again with this part here. Okay, so that you can go ahead and get this fabbed up. Most likely, our team looking at this, we'd probably just Bridgeport all this stuff. So we just need to get the mounting holes for the motor transferred, and to do that, we're going to create a sketch on this plane, and then we're going to extrude them all the way through. So the first thing we got to do is you can either come up here and create a sketch on that plane, or I'm just going to type the letter P for project. And what that does, it's essentially creating a sketch on this face. And then it's asking me what geometry I want to project. So the easiest way to do it, so this motor is kind of hidden behind our tube. So I'm going to turn the motor off, or the tube off. So pivot uprights, oops, and then those bodies, let's turn those off. Okay, so now, even though our drawing still exists, but it's on a hidden part. But what I have to do now, so this hole, or this face, is what I need to project onto that drawing. Okay, so I'm gonna click that, and click on OK. So then we are going to come back to this position where turn those back on, and then I'm going to turn the motor off so we can actually see what we're looking at. I'm actually going to turn a couple of things off so it makes it a little bit easier to see. Okay, so now you can see we've got that sketch. The holes for the motor are now projected onto that surface. So now we're basically done. I'm not going to use all 6 motors or 6 mounting holes for our purposes. It's probably a little overkill to mount it with all 6. So I'm just going to project the 4, or extrude the 4 through. So I'm going to extrude that hole, that hole, that hole, and that hole. Then I'm going to drag it all the way through. Now you can see here, by dragging it way too far, I'm taking a bite out of our pulley, and we don't want that. 2 things we can do. One, we can just turn the pulley off, but over here is also objects to cut. Now I don't know if I can drag that out. Yeah, I can. Okay, objects to cut. You see how it's wanting it's got all these check boxes here, but we only want it to go through the uprights. So we're going to uncheck these two. There you can see, even though the red is touching, the red cut path is touching our pulley, it's not going to cut it. So then I'm going to click on OK. And give it a second. There. We've now got our holes for the motor mount done. We can turn the motor back on. Okay. Save our work. That part is now done. Okay, so now we're going to finish up this section of the video by creating a 2D drawing of this part. So we're going to, these holes do kind of need to be fairly precise so that our belts will fit, and also so that our motor mounts up in the right spot. So to do that, in one of the prior videos I walked through, but we'll do it again. We're going to go up to the design button here, and we're going to go to create a drawing from design. And what will pop up is a 2D drawing space where we can go ahead and do dimension drawings. So we don't need the entire model in this. If we were to start with this entire model, it would just bog everything down. So contents, we're gonna drop this down to select, and I'm going to select the pivot upright. So basically all it's going to do is pull this section into our drawing that we will be able to pick and choose. Essentially the only thing we're going to change the units to inches, and then we're going to change the standard to ASME, and we're just going to do an A size sheet of paper. This is all working around the size of paper we're going to use. So then we'll click on OK. You can see it created a brand new tab up here. So what happens first is we come in, and this is the entire pivot assembly. We can place it essentially anywhere we want. So for now, we'll just drag it in and pop it into there. And then for now, we can change the orientation. Let's see what happens with a front view, top view. Let's try, this is the closest we want. We'll fix it when we come over here to pick and choose what we want to show. And then the next thing we want to do is just try and make it as big as possible. 1 to 1 might be too big, so we'll just keep 1 to 2, and then we can relocate it once we get it landed, and we'll just click OK. So I clicked on it once, and then clicked on it again to move it. So now you can see here there's a whole bunch of stuff we don't need. So what we're going to do is come over here. We're going to just start picking and choosing what we want to display. Essentially, the only thing we want to display is the one body that we made the bolt holes for. So we'll uncheck all this stuff. Okay, we're close. Where are the bolt holes? So you got to remember, it's got both the uprights, both those 2-inch uprights shown in the drawing. So now we just have to guess. There's the right one. Okay, so now we've got this part that is ready to start putting some dimensions on. I'm going to just kind of position it, and then I'm going to look around. Again, I don't spend too much time in this part of Fusion, so bear with me while I there's rotate. So I want to get this rotated just to make things a little bit easier to read. So we're going to rotate it. We're going to rotate that, and then click on transform. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees just to make it easier. Okay. So now, one thing, at least with a Bridgeport, manufacturing this off of Bridgeport, you have to create the best way to get something fabbed up and communicate what you want fabbed up is with ordinate dimensions. And what that means is I select a feature on the part as 0, 0. And everything else referenced on that part, holes, etc., are referenced back to that position. Because when you load up a Bridgeport, you tell it, okay, here's 0, here's 0, and from that point forward, you can get a very, very, very accurate positioning. So we typically use ordinate dimensions. So we're going to go ahead and start laying some of those out as soon as I can find my mouse. Okay, so ordinate dimension, define view ordinate origins and place ordinate dimensions referencing them. Okay, so this is my ordinate dimension that way, and this is my ordinate dimension that way. Okay, so at that point, we can start placing each and every one of these holes. So if I come down here, you can see it's 1 inch down. And then 1.0236. Probably could have moved that up to 0.0236 inches, but we're going to deal with it. Okay. So again, what this means is I come down 1 inch and over 1.0236 inches for this hole. And then we'll zoom in on these holes. 5.2378, 5.944, and then 6.652. Okay, and then the next thing we have to do is locate these holes up and down on the part. 0.929, 1.707. Okay, so all those holes are located. Typically, you don't have to do each and every positional hole. As long as I know, like this hole is 5.273 over and 1.7 inches down. So then we need to do specify the diameter of these holes. So I'm going to do diameter, pick that one, 1.125. We're going to pick that one, also 1.125. And we're going to do that one is 0.159. Now, you got to remember what we did, the way we created that part was I just projected the bolt holes from the motor onto the tubing structure. That is line to line. You probably want to make those a little bit, give them a little bit of clearance. I think a 1032 bolt, you want like a 0.2, or I think that's right. I can't remember. The point I'm trying to make is this 0.159 probably won't work in the real world. So you'd probably want to drill that out to like 0.316 or something like that. I don't know. But the point is, we now have a drawing that will accurately locate all of the critical holes. Okay, so the last thing we have to do on this pivot before we call it done is undo our oopsie with respect to clamping the intake onto the hex shaft so we can actually get it to rotate. So what you'll see here on the one side is me spending the last half hour trying to figure out how we're going to do that. So this end result, so what we have here is 2 hex hubs sandwiching our 1x2 that we're going to put through here. And then we're just basically through bolt from one side through to the other, and it should work like a charm. You got this keeping the acting as a spacer between the 2 hex hubs. Now, the one thing I did is if you look through here, let's do a little bit better view. Those 2 parts are awfully close to each other when they, actually, I think they crash. One sec. Yeah, they do crash. So in the real world, probably what we do is we throw those on a belt sander and grind them off, or a mill and just take them down. But for the most part, they should work just fine. Just need to get them until the point where they can sandwich everything together just fine. So what I'm going to do now is walk you through how exactly I did all that. So the first thing I did, so you can see I blew away the bearings and the clamp collar already. So let's make the 1x2. Now I did measure roughly about how far it is, how long it needs to be, and I think I made it 4.5 inches. You can see here we're fairly clear of our motor and pulley for the intake, so let's just measure that edge. I think it was like 4.5 inches. Okay, so let's make our 1x2 extrusion. Now, what we could do, and I'm going to get into this in the next video, our part library, but what we could do is drag in some of our pre-made or downloaded extrusions. These are from Rev. I like actually just making my own, because that way I don't have to worry about holes lining up, etc. In the real world, you might have to worry about that. But for the most part, I'm just going to go ahead and create my own extrusion. So to do that, I'm going to come up here onto the create and create a box. And it can be anywhere, but I'll just choose a part here. And it needs to be 1 inch by 2, excuse me, 1 inch by 2 inches. And then we said it was 4.5 inches. Now, if I were to just go ahead and do this right now, it would create this outrigger or whatever you want to call it, attached as part of this upright. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to change the join operation to a new body. So that way it doesn't attach this, and I can freely move this part as I see fit. So click OK on that. And then what I'm going to do is just pull it off of there so I can pull it, I can move it, I can modify it. So now to make an extrusion, there's 2 steps now. Right now, this is a solid block of whatever. This, excuse me. This is the shell command, and what it does is you pick a face, and then you specify how big, how thick you want your shell. So I'm going to use just 0.1 inches. I think it might be in the real world a little bit thinner than that. But for now, we'll just call it 0.1 inches and click on OK. So you can see how it made just a solid path or solid wall box. But when you do that, it only does it on the one side. So if we were to come around through here, you can see it's still solid on the back side there. So there's actually a 0.1 wall underneath this. So to eliminate that, we have to extrude that bottom face. So I'm going to click on the extrude command, select that bottom face, drag it around so you can see a little bit better. And then I'm just going to pull it out just that far and cut it out and click on OK. So now if I drag through, you can see we now have our solid extrusion there. Okay. So now we need to get it back into the right location. Now, how to do that? Luckily for us, this is in line with these holes. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do a point-to-point move and get it oriented, get the center line of this tube mated to the center line of that tube. We're going to move that solid body. I'm going to make a point-to-point. So what I want is the midpoint of this edge with the center line of that hole. All right. So now we know it's centered between our two polycarb, and it's also centered up down in our arms. So now we just need to drag it roughly into the right position, side to side. So we'll just do that. Okay, so 15 millimeters is too far. And I think what we want is 12.7. There, exactly a ½ inch. So that is now in line and just touching our radius right there. So we'll click on OK. All right, so now our aluminum extrusion is in position. Now we have to get our hubs in there. So I'm going to come up here to my part library. I'm going to go over the part library in the next video. You can see I've already dragged it in here, but I'm just going to drag another one in here. So these are ½ inch hubs. So it pops in. Now we need to get it into the correct orientation. So that is in the correct orientation. Basically, I'm just going to mirror what I have over on this side. So now let's do a point-to-point move. And to do that, point to point. And then, so I want this surface flush with the outside surface of the polycarb. So I'm going to line that hole up. Come back up here. And select that hole. That looks good. Then I'm going to do the same thing with another one. Drag in a ½ inch hex hub. This time I need to flip it around and have it face this way, 90 degrees. And then another point-to-point move, again, using that surface with the outside of our polycarb. There. And click on OK. Okay, so we've got our parts in there. Now all we need to do is project our holes so that we can start cutting holes for all this stuff. So I'm gonna make I'm gonna type P to project. So basically typing P, it eliminates a step in creating a projection. The slow way of doing it would be to create a sketch on this surface and then P when you're in sketch mode to project all these holes on. Whereas if you just type P, it skips that first step of actually creating the sketch. Okay, so now we're on our aluminum extrusion, and quite seriously, you need to click, all you need to do is click that, the outside of our polycarb and our hub, and our sketch is done. Now what I'm going to do to make things a little bit easier to see, I'm going to turn off this intake, and I'm also going to turn off our hubs we added so we can actually see our sketch. And then actually I'm going to turn the intake back on because I need to make holes in this intake. Now, going back, theoretically, these polycarb are in fabrication right now, so it's kind of hard to make holes unless they've stopped. So, I mean, realistically, you'd probably go through and mount the hubs up, mount the arms up, and drill through. So whatever. But we do need to make the holes in the polycarb, so we're going to do that. Now what I'm going to do is extrude. Let's just start picking our holes that we need to start extruding. And I might end up having to turn off. Yeah, I'm gonna have to turn off the upright, or turn off the intake. Be able to see them all. Now I'm only gonna do the 4 holes for the hub, because these are over the edge of our 1x2. We don't want to make those holes. Okay, so now that I've got my holes picked, I can turn this intake back on. Okay, because of where the sketch is located, I need to go in 2 directions for my extrusion. So I need to go that way and this way. So to do that, change our one side to 2 sides. Then I come through here to go through the polycarb, and then I go through here to go through the aluminum and the other side of the polycarb. That looks right. Double check our objects to cut, so it's just the... Okay, so I had to double check something. When I made the other side, I did not cut the back side, this side of the polycarb. That's what I got confused about. So we're gonna go ahead and turn the intake off so we can pick our holes. Extrude that and that. Now that I've got everything picked, I can turn the intake back on. Need a 2-sided. Come out here through the polycarb and go back through here. Looks right. Turn off this body one. I'm not entirely sure what that is, but okay. So now what we have, I'm going to turn the intake off, and you can see these are all our mounting holes that we'll need for both the hub and the polycarb through to the aluminum. I did miss a set of holes though for the hub. So let's turn that sketch back on. Go, there it is. Okay, it did not capture the hole or the shaft of the hub. That one. So we're gonna just do another sketch this time. We'll project it over there. And this time we are going to project that diameter. Click OK. We're going to finish the sketch. Now I'm going to turn that hub off. Turn that other sketch off. And now I'm going to extrude this one. And again, same thing. I need to make it a two-sided. This time we're going to cut it that way. Cut it that way. Okay. Turn everything back on. Now, one thing you'll notice when we start creating parts, sometimes what'll happen is these commands get rolled up in the product tree. I mean, typically once you're certain that the part is correct, you can go ahead and select them all and then click on dissolve. That just makes them go away. And then we'll turn on our intake. And there we go. So now what we have is we got our rigid aluminum structure sandwiched between the two polycarb. We got 4 hubs going through and constraining the motion. I feel like that's going to be pretty locked in. So yeah. All right. I think our pivots are done. Our intake was done. So the next video, what we're going to start doing is I'm going to get into the materials library, and we're going to do something I lovingly call arranging furniture.